bringing us together. And we want to pray, Lord, for the Holy Spirit to enlighten us, so that we may be able to bring forth any queries that we've had at the back of our minds. And if we have the answers, please bring that to our remembrance. And if not, then help us to find the answers in the word or the testimonies. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen. All right. So, just in case, if anyone has any questions they want to kick us off with, and as that queues up, just if no one ends up having anything as well, I will have other questions, but yeah. Thoughts on numerology? Okay, so that's a good question. So when it comes to numerology, let's define it for everyone, right? Let's just get a nice, I want an Oxford dictionary definition of numerology. Okay. Wait. So the definition for numerology is the use of numbers to try to tell somebody what will happen in the future, right? Now, there seems to be an understanding of a wider use of numerology. So, like, to not just convey what will happen in the future through numbers, but to encode specific messages through numbers. So, for example, if I said something, if I did something like every letter in the alphabet corresponds to its position, right? And I wanted to encode the word cat, that can come out as a number. So if I wanted to encode a message in numbers, like the cat ran over the fence, and I turn each letter to a number, it would look like a string of numbers, and there's encoded a hidden meaning, right? And that could be classed as under numerology today. But then the wider definition for numerology is also using numbers to kind of like tell the future. That's more towards like the occult. So why is that important? So now we come to biblical numerology. So in biblical numerology, it tends to use the the first use that I mentioned, where something is encoded within within a word. So a number is encoded within a word, right? And the clearest example of this is the actual mark of the beast. So in Revelation 13, right? Revelation 13, where it speaks about the beast's number, this is what a lot of people today would consider some form of numerology, right? Because it says, and no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here's wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. So in other words, you could see how this is also futuristic as well, right? Because the 666 is for a title of a man that's coming. So it makes it clear that this man is at the head of the beast. That man has a name, and that name is 666. So here we see the Bible kind of using those numbers to encode a certain message for people to look out for. Now, I guess there's another aspect to this, and let me know if I'm along the right path, but the idea that within biblical numerology, certain numbers have a special value. So for example, like the number 7, right? The number 7 represents completeness or perfection. Now, let me know if I'm along the right track, if that's another angle you're thinking of. And then I can expand on that too. Yeah, 7 women in Isaiah. Oh, she may have stepped away for a sec. So At least I'll expand what was in my mind, and then I'll see. So let's say you have another form of numerology where you have these um, numbers that have a significant meaning. So, like for example, or it brings out an interesting pattern. So, the number 4 can be significant because of the Sabbath. The number 7 because of completeness, and not only that, the Sabbath day, right? So you find that the Lord uses the number 7 a lot of times throughout Scripture, and not only is it pointing back to, let's say, the Sabbath, but it's also communicating a message of completeness, right? And you also have the number 12 being significant, 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 disciples, the 144,000 is 12 times 12 for 12 tribes of Israel, each having 12,000. Oh, let's make sure that is also 100%. Yeah. So you can see that the Bible can use numbers to communicate. So, for example, Moses fasts 40 days, Elijah fasts 40 days, and then Jesus fasts 40 days. So sometimes even the numbers throughout the Bible is to communicate a certain similarity in either events or people's lives and what have you. So it's like, for example, in Jesus or in Moses, you see a type of Jesus because he had the 40-day fast, or Elijah, he had the 40-day fast. Um, and in Jesus, he has the 40-day fast. So you saw types of Jesus in Moses and Elijah. So that's where the numerology can even come into play. Uh, is there any other angle that potentially you're also thinking of? I missed some stuff. What's a good summary? Ah, okay. So the summary was essentially this. So biblical numerology, um, we can see it being used to encode a certain message. So, for example, we know that the name of the beast, of the man who's at the head of the beast, 666, right? So there it's being used as a code, right? But I guess that's only one instance that I can think of the top of my mind. But then we can also see how the Bible uses numbers to communicate either parallels. So, like between Moses, Elijah, and Jesus, it's using numbers to communicate parallels, right? Because 40, 40, 40 in terms of the fast, it uses it to communicate a certain message. For example, the number 7 tends to represent completeness. So whenever the Bible is using 7, it's always associated with like fullness, completeness, and that would be to communicate the message of the Sabbath, that the Sabbath was on the 7th day, and that represented a completed work, right? The number 4 can be significant because of the Sabbath as well, in one sense. But then the number 12 can also represent a symbolic parallel. For example, Israel had 12 tribes, and there's a prophetic whisper to Jesus having 12 disciples. So sometimes the Bible uses certain numbers to draw parallels and to lead people's minds back and forth between events. So it helps to link events together. Calm. All right. Anyone else? Any other questions as well? Any questions on your mind? I have a point I can also raise up here. You can type H in the chat or type it out as well, even as I'm bringing up this point and then answering this question. So one thing I notice, you may see this um, this phrase. Oh, I'm in the wrong chapter. I was searching for it. I was wondering where's it gone. I had it just here. Here we go. So Romans 17, it says, "For therein," is Romans 1:17 to 18. "For therein is the righteousness of God revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith." For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness. Now, what does it mean to hold the truth in unrighteousness? Basically, to hold the truth in unrighteousness basically means that you know the truth, but you're just going to carry on in sin, right? You hold the truth, you have the truth, but in unrighteousness, you're not letting that truth actually change your life. That's why Paul actually goes on to explaining this. He actually explains himself in verse 19, where he says this. Hold up. He says, because that they have certain types of romance. Sorry. Now, let's bring it a whole bunch up so that we're not going back. So it says, because that they which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God hath showed it unto them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. So, in other words, because that which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God hath showed it unto them. In other words, when we know they're holding the truth in unrighteousness because it says God hath showed them the truth. Now, Paul, I believe here is kind of referring to mainly his experience in Lystra. Is it Lystra? Is in it's where Lystra. It would be Lystra. So where he healed the man who had the withered hand, right? Withered hand? Or he said, get up. Yeah, the way he healed the man who I think was paralyzed, and he told him to get up. Let me see. Here we go. So impotent in feet. Yeah, where he healed the man that was impotent in feet. Impotent in feet. Why did I say withered hand? And then the men were like, they were going to worship them as gods. And so Paul is making it clear. So it's also referring to the Greeks in general as well. But the point is this. So the truth of God is shown to them, but it says, for the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. So in other words, we know that God exists. We know that God is who he is by the things that are made, right? We can infer that. And in fact, this is actually a famous argument. For example, we've heard of the watchmaker argument, but there's a higher level name for it. Higher level names. I'm just searching it right now. The teleological argument. So Paul is actually making the teleological argument right here. So the teleological argument is something called an argument by design, right? But Paul is essentially making the same argument. So the argument by design is that, okay, you have a phone. If I said to you, your phone appeared out of thin air, would you believe me? Would any of you believe me if I just said to you, hey guys, your phone appeared out of thin air? Obviously, no, right? You'd probably be thinking, like, what are you talking about? My phone appeared out of thin air. Or any device that you own. If I said it appeared out of thin air, or if I said it made itself or brought itself together, how many of you would believe me? None of you, right? And I'm glad none of you would probably believe me. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because it means we can infer the presence of something even without seeing the thing. So you see a roll of loo. You know that didn't come about by itself. You see a laptop, that didn't come about. You always infer a creator. Now, here's the thing. The logic becomes, if something's more complicated, should we expect that it's easier for it to come into existence by itself or harder? So, for example, if I have a nail cutter, right? I have a nail cutter and I have a car. Would it make sense for me to say it's easier for the car to come together itself? I'm gonna let the type in type, and then I'll give the answer. A snowman can't even come. That's a point, right? A snowman can't even come together itself. Now, what's more complicated, the world, planet Earth, or a car? What's more complicated? Earth. So, if that which is more complicated, it's more absurd for that to come into existence by itself. The idea is, therefore, if you see something created, we should infer a creator. If we see a creation, we should naturally just infer a creator. That's the logical step, right? Cool. Now, Paul is making that same argument that the things from the creation of the world, from the invisible things of him, from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Verse 21, because that when they knew God, in other words, they did know God. That's why we can say they held the truth in unrighteousness, because the truth was revealed to them. They did know God, and they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain meaning like empty in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Or, yeah, professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, because the Greeks seek wisdom. So when he says, I'm a debtor both to the Greeks and to the barbarians, both to the wise and the unwise, for the Greeks seek wisdom, and the Jews seek a sign, right? Verse 23, and change the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like to corruptible man, to birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things. Wherefore God also gave them up to uncleanliness through the lust of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves, who changed the truth of God into a lie and worshipped and served the creature more than the creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. So that passage is just Paul going to more detail in terms of his experience that these guys, they changed. It can't be the Jews, right? Because the Jews did not, well, at least Second Temple period, what Paul would be aware of, the Jews weren't trying to do this four-footed beast thing. They were very much against it. First Temple period, yeah, you could say that. But the Greeks were the ones mainly doing a lot of this stuff, or those are the Gentiles. So Paul is basically making it clear, like, look, the Gentiles, they've been shown the truth, right? And in fact, let's go. He says, and likewise, men leaving the natural use of the women, burned in their lust towards one another, men working with men, that which is unseemly, receiving in themselves that recompense of their error, which was meat. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient. Boom. Oh, when the Bible says those who hold the truth in unrighteousness, that is the equivalent of knowing the truth and then continuing to sin. And that's where you can be left to a reprobate mind. So in other words, if somebody hasn't fully heard the truth, it's not guaranteed that they're fully in a reprobate mind, right? Until they hear the truth and God is made manifest to them. Okay? All right. There's also another question I have here. Let me bring it up. Da-da-da-da-da. One second. So, but this question is a longer one. So let me check. Let me see if Brother Will, you have a question, and then I'll see which one is. I'll see which one is shorter. Let me see. Are you typing? Whilst you're typing that out, let me go to the chapter in question that this person asked me on. But yeah, you could. I wonder as well, because there are, I think, 5 major philosophical arguments for the existence of God, and The teleological argument is one. There's something called the Kalam cosmological argument. I think there's another three, but I can't remember off the top of my head. The Kalam cosmological argument. I'm not sure if this is in the Bible. Maybe a verse will come to you guys, your minds. But think of it like this: the Kalam cosmological argument essentially goes, anything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause, and that cause cannot be of itself. So in other words, trying to say philosophically, it cannot be the Big Bang. If someone was to say they believe in the Big Bang, um, there would still need to be a cause prior to the Big Bang, because the Big Bang would be the thing that is uh, part of the creation of the universe, not the creator itself. All right, so Job 7 is going to be easier to answer. So I'll come to your question afterwards. So this person asked, my understanding is that Job is going from speaking from Eliphaz to God at the end of chapter 7. So it seems like when he's talking, he's directing his talk to his friends, then switching and speaking to God. Yes. Job does this all throughout uh, chapter 7. No, all throughout the whole book. He will speak as if he's talking to his friend, but then he will speak as if he's talking to God. And we know that at least by the end of chapter 7, he's talking to God, because here, here, how long will thou not depart from me, nor let me alone till I swallow down my spittle? I have sinned. What shall I do unto thee, O thou preserver of men? So obviously it's not his friend that's a preserver of man. Why hast thou set me as a mark against thee? Now that's a verse you can use to demonstrate that the mark is about sin, right? So that I'm a burden to myself. And why dost thou not pardon my transgression and take away my iniquity? For now I shall sleep in the dust, and thou shalt seek me in the morning, but I shall not be. This is a very good verse for soul sleep, actually, because he's speaking to God, is he not? Oh, that's a good verse for soul sleep, actually. Hang on a minute. Hey, this is cooking. Hold up. Hold up. Stay with me now, guys. Stay with me now. Listen, Job is talking to God here, right? Yes or no? Yes. Why? Because he's not talking to his friend to pardon his transgression. He says, for now I shall sleep in the dust, and thou shalt seek me in the morning, but I shall not be. If Job sleeping goes to heaven or any existence straight away, wouldn't God be able to seek him and find him? And he will be, because he will just find him in Abraham's bosom. The fact that Job says God will seek him and he will not be, well, there is another way this could be taken. This could be taken another way, actually. I just thought of it. It could be, and this is could be the confusion as well, part of the confusion. He switches again, speaking to his friends here. Someone could say that. So here, let me break it down. Let me break it down. So it can be speaking to God, and then right here, speaking to friends again. So the thing is, Job is switching back and forth very fluently, but this verse can potentially demonstrate that he can do it all in one verse. You know what? Just because of that, I may not use it definitively as it still could be used actually, because it's the idea that he believes that he will not be, like he won't exist, essentially. I guess someone could always argue, yeah, but he's talking about existing on the earth. If it proved, if there was 100%, let me see, let me go to the next one. but I shall not be. Yeah, he does say shall not be. Yeah, he does say shall not be. So that could help lock it down in terms of on this earth, isn't it? That's a good point. That's a good point. Because not very many people say, "Oh, when I die, I shall not be." It's not. I'll look and see, but it's not really something you hear. I won't exist. When I die, I won't exist. Yeah, that tends to be the idea that scripture uses, the like to be or not to be idea, existence. So just to answer concretely, in the book of Job, when Job is speaking, sometimes he's speaking as if he's talking to his friends, then he's speaking as if he's talking to God. And it can switch quite back and forth quite a lot. And how I would imagine it to help someone is like, how does that happen? Remember, you're reading a story or a historical account. So you're not seeing his actions. So I would say the best way to imagine it is like his friends are right there and he's speaking to them, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like he looks up to the sky, right? It doesn't have to be exactly this way, but this is a way you can imagine it to see, oh, this actually makes sense that it feels like he's speaking to his friends than speaking to God. Is that he could be looking to the sky whilst complaining, why does not thou pardon my transgression? So it's like he's speaking to his friends, looking at his friends, looking at his friends, then looks up to the sky. Why don't you pardon my transgression? Obviously, if you're writing that down, it could look like, oh, he's just switching randomly. But let's say you were there to observe his actions and his posture and stuff. You can probably it'll be easy to tell. Oh yeah, when he's not speaking directly to his friend, because maybe he looks away from his friends whilst he's speaking these things that are meant to be directly to God, and then turns back to his friends when he's addressing them. But the verse doesn't, or the text doesn't necessarily say, um, what is this? The text doesn't necessarily say, and Job turned to heaven and said, da da da, because he does it so many times. So it may have been a lot to add that in. So let's go to Brother Will's question. So I have a question. If someone married someone else and they're together for 8 years and everything is fine, then one of the partners have a mental illness and basically is crazy. Let's say the man remarries but still takes care of his ex. The church disfellowships him because he is married someone else, and there was no adultery. Was the church right? Oh, I think someone literally brought something up about this. I think there was a case from Sister White's day where a woman became lunatic and something similar to this happened. I'm gonna have to find that. I'm not gonna lie. Let me find that quote because I can't. Because my natural thought process would be, well, he can't divorce his wife. That was my natural thought process. And then Brother Gabe brought up something on just this Sabbath gone. That he read something about a man was married and his wife was a lunatic, became a lunatic or something like that. And Sister White had a certain counsel on that, but let me not speak until I actually get it. Let me not speak till I actually get it. So if you can be patient with me, yeah, I need to find that. I need to find that because Sister White actually spoke to something like this. I may post it to you even directly. That's so interesting that case comes up because naturally I can see why the church did that, right? Because it'll be like, wait, you can't just divorce your wife, especially because the thought process will be in sickness and in health, right? But Gabe mentioned something, so either maybe he misread something or didn't fully quite get the reason, but I don't want to say for sure. Or there may be something else for us to consider. So yeah, it was quite interesting. It was quite interesting. So, wow, that's a heavy question, man. That's a heavy question. It's funny because I think earlier today, I, yeah, it's in real life. I think earlier today, I thought of, I don't know why, but Matthew 19 came to mind in terms of why did it come to mind even? Like people being married, them learning the truth, some of them being married to someone they shouldn't be married, like kind of like an Abraham and Hagar situation. It's like you legally should be with this other wife, etc. And kind of like how to handle that, especially if, let's say, for cases where you didn't know the truth, how do you handle that? You just take it like, well, you're ignorant, and just make sure you don't do it again from here. Need to look more into that. So that's what I was thinking on that line. So it's interesting you ask a question along that theme. Maybe it was for me to go and look further into. Maybe that's why it came to mind, so that by now I would have had the answer. My bad. But yeah. Anyone else got any questions? Any questions come into anyone's mind? I'll give it some time. Any biblical or SOP questions? The floor is up for anyone to type. If not, I'll bring something.
I
Yep.
would have a question, if that's okay. I was just wondering, you know how Sister White talks about you have to be careful not to be an extremist. So,
Yeah.
you know, if there's something in Spirit of Prophecy that's not like super squeaky clean, like things the way you kind of have to wrestle with God, and like, for instance, like this is an example. So I know that your body is a temple of God. And so whatever you eat and whatever you wear, like you want to make sure that you don't do anything that can, you want to do your best to be healthy and not influence. So I've learned recently about fabrics, how some fabrics in is actually really harmful for you. So is there like a line where you have to just relax a little bit? Because I'm doing my best to find like only cotton, right, for my girls and for me, and to have it in a be modest, etc. But then you can take that whole very far. Where okay, is the cotton GMO? Is there what dyes that they use? And I know that you need to do your best and whatever. But if there's a lot of things going on at the same time, is it wise to put energy there? Do you know what I mean? Like, I just feel sometimes like
Yeah.
if I had to answer my own question, I would say you do the best that you can. And the more time there is, you invest more in that. Because sometimes I find that, okay, I didn't cook as good of a meal that day because I was,
I'll say, let me address the question directly first, and then I'll mention the other thing on my mind later. So, if you know, think of it like this: you can be in the good category, you can be in the bad category. Once you're in the good category, then just that you're already fine, and anything extra you do is a bonus. So, what do I mean by that? Okay, let's say we want to move towards a plant-based diet, right? If you eat white rice, it's not a sin, right? It's not a sin. Now, could you learn and realize maybe brown rice is better and eat brown rice? Yeah, that's fine. If you eat white rice, it's not like you sinned, right? But if you eat brown rice, right? Sure, you may know about the benefits of that and you're eating that brown rice and probably better for you, right? If you have that knowledge. You may be aware that, okay, if you buy fruit from the store, it may not be as nutritious as if you grew that fruit yourself. Does it mean you can't buy fruit from the store? No. Just because it's not the perfect nutrition, when I say the perfect nutrition, it's not that it's not nutritious. It's still very nutritious. It's just that just because it's not the perfect highest max amount of vitamin A or vitamin C that that fruit or that vegetable could potentially have, it doesn't now make that thing a bad thing. So similar when you come into clothes, right? You may want your girls to wear a certain type of fabric. Now the thing is, yeah, cotton is fine, but I believe even some blends are still okay. The only mixture we see condemned in the Bible is wool and linen, and people stretch that to say all mixed fabrics. But the idea is, let's say you had for your girls another type of fabric where it doesn't cause them any reaction, and their skin handles it well, and it does what everything it needs to do, is modest. Just because it's not cotton doesn't necessarily mean that, oh no, this is bad and therefore it's like a sin or something like that. Because I don't believe Sister White actually speaks on like quote unquote clothing material to like in depth, if you will. Yeah, because for example, if you are aware, for example, that you have a child that they are sensitive to like wool, right? So I know, for example, me, I can't actually wear wool, right? It would irritate me. But if you knew that for, let's say, your child, then obviously then you wouldn't get wool, because that now is becoming a health thing, because you can see what's irritating them or irritating their skin. But if you see that, you know what, they're doing all right with 80% cotton and 20% some other thing, or 60% cotton, 40% some other thing, right? It's fine. It's fine. We don't see, because the Bible, nor SOP, speaks specifically on 60% cotton and 40% something else. We don't need to make it a problem or a test, or make a test out of that. Do you see what I'm saying so far?
Yes, no, I see it. I don't know. Maybe I'm allowing the devil to how there's this quote that says there's a million distractions. That's sometimes not necessarily bad, but it could be a distraction to get you from the real thing. Because I just, it's hard for me to let go, because I'm trying to follow the principle, where, and for the temperance principle, where anything that's bad for you, you cut it out, and what's good you keep in moderation. And that principle always gives me like grief. But I know that it's too much right now, because there are many areas, like for instance, the dish detergent. I know that detergent is not good for my skin, and those chemicals are not good for my health. And I want to have a good health, so I have a clear brain, so I can hear God's voice. But I'm struggling to find the natural ingredients to make the detergent right now, and I'm working on it. But every time I use the detergent, I think you're probably not trying hard enough. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, uh, let's deal with that. So, for example, if you knew that a certain detergent causes a reaction, then yeah, it's not you being extreme by trying to make or find a detergent that it is good for you. Like, for example, people that suffer with eczema, we cannot never say they're extremists because they're going to great lengths to find, say, soaps or washing up liquids that agree with their skin. And so they will look like, oh, they're being a bit extra, right? But that's because they have a different condition. And so they need to do that. But let's say someone doesn't have that condition and is like, no, you generally can use this thing and it's not going to be bad for you, then you may not have to put as much time and effort into that area, if you will. You may be fine. So it's also going to depend on the individual. So when it comes to the temperance, right, in terms of cutting out all things bad for us, I think what makes it difficult sometimes is what is actually bad or good, right? Because the thing is, you may read something and be like, oh, I heard that 100% cotton is healthy and 98% cotton is unhealthy, and um, therefore, I've now classed this as bad. So I need to move away from 98% cotton and get to 100% cotton. Otherwise, I'm now not being temperate, or I'm breaking the health reform principle. That's where things are getting dangerous. Unless if it's not mentioned in the Bible or the testimonies that, hey, 98% cotton is bad, that's where it needs to be by experience, in terms of, well, do you actually suffer, right? do you suffer, or has God revealed that, yeah, now this thing is really bad for you? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. It's just that, okay, I don't have a reaction from my dishwashing detergent, but I know those chemicals and the colorants on there are not the best for me. Do you know what I mean? So it's so hard to let go for me. I don't know why. Like, I just feel like if I know that can impact my health, and because of all that list of chemicals in there, I know it has to make and it has to do. You know, it's not healthy, those things in there, and I have learned, like through many people's studies and whatever, that it's best to bear away from those things. I don't even know what my question is exactly, but I just feel like it can be an Alice in Wonderland hole, right? Because it's almost everything. So I'm trying to keep a balance, but also keep some accountability. And I was just wondering if you guys also see that and feel that, or if maybe that in itself, because I'm so focused on all those things, that in itself can hinder my relationship with God because I'm focusing on these other things. So if I know this is kind of like a conscience issue, right, where you kind of have to pray about it and relax yourself. But I was just wondering if you guys also think that you really need to make an effort on those things, like the soaps and the clothes and things that's not like straight out from spirit or prophecy. And like, even though, okay, it's not a sin, but in principle, it's the temperance message. And, our detergent is not what she didn't have the detergent we had, but we kind of need to carry over the principle. So then, yeah, I kind of lost my question, but yeah, it bugs me, I feel like every time, and then also the thing within Ellen White, they give you with the dress reform, like suggesting that it should be below your elbow, like not above your elbow. So I'm trying to find clothes for the girls because I want to be a good example, but it's very hard to find those clothes unless you make them. That is like a good breathable material where I live. That's not like nylon or polyester that we know is very, like, those chemicals seep into your skin. So I'm trying to fit it all together. And sometimes I'm wondering, like, because some Adventists say, no, there is definite quotes where, your skirt needs to be kind of like calf level and it needs to cover your elbow. So then I have a t-shirt and a skirt that's all the way to the ground. That looks pretty modest. And most Seventh-day Adventists are like, yeah, that's super modest. But I feel like it's not below. My t-shirt is above my elbow. It's not very high, but it's above my elbow. So then my conscience is bothering me, like, find a way, find this, like, learn how to sew. But I'm learning how to sew, but I'm also worried about the detergent. And you see what I mean? It's like, is there,
All right,
I'm
so let
struggling to
me,
balance it.
yeah, let me help you out there. So I would say this: when it comes to the dress thing, there is an actual quote, right? Sister White, when she saw in vision the type of dress that seemed modest, it was like 9 inches, yeah, within 9 inches to the floor. So when you're about in that range, you're in a good spot, right? If your dress is like 9 inches or less towards the floor, but not actually even touching the floor, because it shouldn't be sweeping the street, right? Now, guys, when it comes to trousers, everybody tends to get this right? Like, you notice that the trousers isn't so long that it's sweeping the floor, nor is it so short that it's turning into shorts, right? So a lot of guys and now ladies that wear trousers kind of, it becomes so easy for the length. But when it comes to dresses and skirts, because it's designed in such a high variance, people therefore wonder, oh, what's a good length? But really, if when in doubt, then you could always think, well, wear the dress to the length that guys would wear trousers, right? But a good maximum tends to be about 9 inches from the floor, which on a lady, 9 inches would go to about your calf, right? Because, especially if you're like, average lady height in America is like 5'3" or something, 5'4" or something like that. So yeah, 9 inches can actually go to about your calf or something like that. So yeah, just go for a decent amount of modesty. Now, here's what I'll say with the elbow and the shirt thing. Now, Sister White does mention the limbs being covered, but the context of that was mainly winter. In those quotes, whilst I don't yet have something that says at all times all of the arms should be covered, I tend to think about the elbow-ish range is also good in terms of modesty. I would also say that, say sleeveless tops, that's clearly okay, too much, right? For example, when guys wear either sleeveless tops, like gym stuff, uh, or ladies do it, I think, yeah, that's where it's starting to become immodest, right? But then think something going to about elbow length, think is a good rough, should I say range? Now, I also am of the opinion, I know that there's someone else who's a bit more strict on this, but I haven't yet seen the quote. So until I find the quote, I am currently of the opinion that if it's just above the elbow as well, it's not the end of the world. But for, the closer to the elbow, the safer. But when it's starting to get above the bicep completely and to the shoulders, that's where things are really going off, I would say. With
All
this
right.
yeah.
Thank you.
Now,
Because I was
now,
like, I had a
mhm.
really nice shirt and it was just above the elbow. I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to find something else. And I just thought that, maybe I'm taking this too far. But at the other side, in my head, I was like, isn't it better to be safer on the safe side? So, but
Yeah,
that makes sense. Thank you.
yeah. Until we find a quote that is like, oh yeah, no, it can never be above the elbow. For now, I would be like, we don't have enough evidence to say that that's wrong, if you will. Now, I will comment on something, and I'll go to Kezia's question. In terms of the um, extremist thing, right? I would say when it comes to the opinions of the world, you will be labeled an extremist, right? If I'm being honest, every SDA, every truly following or believing SDA is extremist by normal definition, right? Of what's, because there's no way anyone following the Bible and the testimonies is normal by any standard of definition in the Western world. It's just not possible, right? It's just not possible. You're just living two different worlds back to front. The only way you wouldn't seem is if your beliefs are hidden, right? But if your beliefs begin to be more and more known, then yeah, the SDA position would be seen as quite extreme. At least if you brought Ellen White to the modern day, people would think she's extremist, right? Now, obviously, we know she's not. She's just right, and the world is upside down, right? Um, so I would say the only time you don't need to be worried about that label is when it's coming from the world, right? If it's coming from the world, let's say someone worldly or someone non-Christian, even to a Christian, it can seem like that. Then I would say don't let that word have any power over you, right? The same way um, you shouldn't let the word, like, they will probably say like cult and stuff. You shouldn't let that word have power over you, because there's a danger of letting a word, being so afraid to be called a word, that word begins to have power over you, right? And so I would say this: when it comes to the world of Adventism, however, that's where to know if you're truly quote unquote extremist is like, is there a biblical or an SOP reason why I'm thinking this, right? Because if there's a legit biblical or SOP reason why you're thinking that, you could be misled or you could misunderstand, but not necessarily that you're trying to be extreme, if you will. Do you see what I'm saying? Like there was a case, and I wish I could find it, where Ellen White met a bunch of people who they were doing something. I think there was a certain remedy that they weren't accepting, right? Because of their consciousness on, I believe, health reform, right? But Ellen White never called them, say, fanatics or extremists, because she understood that they're holding this position not for an illogical reason, right? Like they have a reason to hold it. It's just in that circumstance, because that specific circumstance was never, it wasn't really revealed to them that, oh, this would be fine. They thought, okay, we're going to avoid a certain thing altogether. I'll have to try and find the actual thing again. But I think it was James White writing about this, made a note that she never called them fanatics or extremists, because obviously they're only doing to what they know. Had they received the light and continued to ignore it, then it would be like, okay, now you're just being weird. Do you see what I mean? So yeah, whenever you're doing something, if you're trying to do it because of Bible and SOP, you don't need to yet worry about whether it's extreme, only if it's been made clear to you, right, what the position is, and you understand the reason behind it, and then you're ignoring it. That's when we're now getting to the territory of what's extreme or not.
What do you think about if you wear pants, but you know those dress pants where it's very loose pants, like you can still see it's a clear pants, but it is like super loose pants, like flowy.
All right, so this gets to Kezia's question basically. So we've gone, we can merge it. So essentially, is are women's trousers bad, right? So they're not man's clothing because they're made for women, right? So are they bad? Now, let's walk through this premise by premise. Just because a certain cloth is made for a certain target audience does not now make that thing good. So, for example, there used to be a show on Netflix that made scanty clad clothing on 11-year-olds. That was bad. Even though you can say that was for 11-year-olds, it was still bad. I'm not even sure if I could screenshot what I'm talking about, but the show was called, should I mention the show? Should I mention it after? Let me mention it after. But anyway, yeah, it got, there was a lot of controversy because of that show, because it was like, isn't this kind of sexualizing children? Now, those clothes were clearly not made for old men or old women. It was made for kids, but it was still bad, right? And so when we go to trousers on women, let me bring up this quote. Sister White says this. Now I'm going to walk through this step by step. So obviously tight clothing can't work, right? And I'm excluding tight clothing out of the equation because when it comes to trousers, you can either have it tight or loose. Now this sets the context behind the quote I'm going to post from Sister White. Because let's say someone has clothing like this. I'm going to post this image. Let's see if it works. Okay, I have to screenshot it. All right. So this trousers, most people would say it's modest, right? It's not tight. So the question is, would Sister White have been against this according to the light of dress reform? Notice what she says here of these people. We shall never imitate Miss Dr. Austin or Mrs. Dr. York. They dress very much like men. We shall imitate or follow no fashion we have ever yet seen. We shall institute a fashion which will be both economical and healthful. The point was, Mrs. Austen, Dr. Austen dressed like this. There was something known as the reform dress, or the American costume, or the so-called reform dress. And it consisted of trousers on women, right, with like a long coat. All forms of that dress, or basically anytime you saw trousers in Sister White's day and women were doing that, was basically condemned, right? She counted it as Deuteronomy 22 verse 5 violation in the dress reform vision. So this was the point, right? In Sister White's day, trousers were seen as completely for guys. And so when it came to dress reform for ladies, there was never a cut of trousers that was ever sanctioned by the church as this is okay. It's only because of the kind of female, should we say, empowerment movements that have happened, like the feminist movement and things like that, where now women have moved towards trousers. In fact, even in nations like France, it was actually, there was a law on the books that it was illegal for women to wear trousers up until like 2013. It was still on the books in 2013, even though people stopped following it long ago. But in America, yeah, trousers, all forms of trousers were seen as directly for guys. And the thing is, these trousers were at the time seen as made for women. So for example, you had things like the bloomers, right? Let me see. American. So this was also the type of dressing that was condemned. Now it's clear from these trousers that men would not wear these type of trousers, right? Men don't wear that. So there were forms that they tried to make it look more, oh, it's not like the guys, it's our type of trousers, right? But no form or no version of the American costume was accepted. And the quote around the American costume was as follows. Let me see if I can find it. Where is it? One second, let me find it. It's in Testimonies for the Church, Volume 1. Here we go. Here we go. One second. Yeah. So she says, oh, banned by Censorbot. She says this. Some who believe the truth may think that it would be more helpful for the sisters to adopt the American costume. Now, the American costume had many different forms of trousers, but the idea behind the trousers for the American costume is that it was trousers for women. So in their day, those women would have had the mindset that these trousers are not designed for men, they're designed for women, right? And then she goes, yet if that mode of dress would cripple our influence among unbelievers so that we could not so readily gain access to them, we should by no means adopt it. Though we suffered much in consequence, but some are deceived in thinking there is much benefit to be received from this costume. While it may prove a benefit to some, it is an injury to others. I saw that God's order has been reversed and his special directions discarded by those who adopt the American costume. And I was referred to Deuteronomy 22 verse 5. The woman shall not wear that which pertaineth to a man, neither shall a man put on a woman's garment, for all that do so an abomination unto the Lord. God would not have his people adopt the so-called reformed dress. It is immodest apparel, wholly unfitted for the modest, humble followers of Christ. There is an increasing tendency to have women in their dress and appearance as near like the other sex as possible, and to fashion their dress very much like that of men, but God pronounces it an abomination. Now, the thing of the American costume that was seen as, yeah, this is bringing us closer to men, was the main part was the trousers. Because in that day, the 1800s, it was the trousers that were seen as this is belonging to the category of men. Did you get that so far?
So if there's a quote that says that when she talks about dress reform, and she says it also depends on climate and profession. So I'm going to put a picture in. If you wear some trousers like this that looks like a skirt, but it is a dress, and you just wear it inside when you're playing with the kids' blocks on the floor, but you don't wear it to town, I wonder if there's a space for it.
What dress is that? Let me see. What's the legitimate issue? Wearing trousers, wearing women's trousers. The legitimate issue is Deuteronomy 22, verse 5. Because trousers, the cut of trousers, right, is put towards exclusively the man, it means that there is no cut that is for women.
So why doesn't the same apply to skirt?
It does apply to skirts. Guys
So
shouldn't
then
be
how come
wearing.
men can get away with it? When I say that, I mean, certain cultures, innit?
I'm not sure of a culture that wears a skirt.
Middle Eastern?
Okay, so robes and skirts are slightly different. So, like in the Bible, we have an example of men wearing robes, but the way the cut of the robe is completely different for women. So, if a woman wore a robe that, let's say, is the men wear in the Middle East, it would look quite mannish, whereas the robes that a woman would wear is very different.
And that
But
goes
there,
back to my original question, does it not? So if a woman wears trousers that are very obviously made for a woman and a cut for a woman, then obviously it's wrong for a man to wear that because it's for a woman. It's the same concept, you get.
yeah, I get the concept. The only difference is there are some clothes that no matter what the cut, like there's just not a sanction for the other gender. So, for example, a woman may wear a bra, right? Guys shouldn't be wearing bras.
Yeah, but men don't have breasts, women have legs, and men have legs. Do you get? It's different.
Yeah, I get that. But some men can develop
That's not the
more.
point, though. That's not the point. But if it's minus, I don't know, 25 degrees outside, what's a woman supposed to wear?
So in Sister White's day, they wore like leggings underneath. So in their day it was pantalettes, but I think there is equivalent for today. So you have things like they would wear this underneath plus the dress on top. Now she lived in Michigan and more the northern parts of the states for a while. So it was warm enough, this kind of wear. It's pretty cold because it was up near Canada, essentially. So the idea was the leggings underneath, right? That would not be the outer most prominent feature. So this, today, some people have even thought, oh, this kind of looks like trousers. But the idea is that this was like undergarments, and that the undergarment, you should have an undergarment that covers all of the leg. And therefore, when you're putting the dress on top, that acts as an extra layer. So you have that warmth.
I think mainly the reason I asked in the first place, right, is just so in life, can women never, ever, ever wear trousers? Yeah.
Yeah, that was the position of the church, basically.
But that was a different time.
Right. But
And that is relevant.
it's relevant in terms of, although it's a different time, at least the standards that were set there was based on the Bible. So if they're quoting Deuteronomy 22 verse 5 as the reason for why that can't happen, that kind of puts a block, because the Bible since that time hasn't changed. So let me give an example. Let's say at that time, men are trying to wear skirts, right? And so we're talking normal skirts, mid waist down to the legs, right? Skirts for men. Let's take something like this. Let's say guys in the church start trying to wear this in her time, and then the church says we can't be doing this because Deuteronomy 22 verse 5. Now, just because the time changes 100 years, it doesn't make that now okay, just because the majority of the population are now okay with it.
So is it sinful for women to wear trousers ever?
Yeah, basically that's the position. So that position was the original position, and now, like, things have obviously changed and shifted. So there are still churches which do hold that, but the culture, the reason why even in SDA churches, it's typically like a tradition that, oh, ladies, you come to church in your dresses and your skirts, right? Is because that's still kind of a leftover as a tradition from the days where it wasn't just on a Sabbath, it was through the week, the women would just be wearing dresses or skirts. So, like Sister White mentions, a woman working in her garden, right? And the picture she conveys about what she's wearing is still a skirt. Or when she's around the house, still a skirt. So, Mariska, this actually even goes to your question as well. When you're asking, what if you have something like this in the house, but you're not going to town with it? The idea was, especially if you had kids, if you're wearing this, obviously your kids think, oh, this is fine, therefore, right? So the kids, they will ask for the same clothing, if you will. So the reason why it would be more important to wear the skirts and the dresses at home, right, is so that they also, especially if it's girls, have an example of, say, what the woman wears and what the man wears. Do you see what I'm saying?
I think there's nuances to it, though.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
If you're in the garden, like sometimes I have to whippersnipper and stuff. I have like a pair of black pants, but they're very wide, and I just wear them for that, and then put it back in. Or you just think you just get an old skirt, and rather safe than sorry.
Yeah. So let me just say this. So the idea behind this is not even just an SOP thing. It's a Deuteronomy 22 verse 5 thing, right? So it's the idea that it's an abomination unto the Lord. Now, what's made this very, very different, and obviously, for example, in Plucked Out, at least a lot of the ladies that say baptized with Plucked Out, right, are of the position that it's skirts throughout the week, right? Now, why is that critical? So here's the point. Let me bring up this quote. Because it was the spiritualists in their day that were pushing for women to actually wear trousers. And obviously not the trousers of men, but like their own version of trousers. It says, those who feel called out to join the movement in favor of women's rights and the so-called dress reform might as well sever all connection with the third angel's message. The spirit which attends the one cannot be in harmony with the other. The scriptures are playing upon the relations of the rights of men and women. So Sister White's always pointing to this is a scriptural thing, as in this precedes even a testament. She's just giving clarification in terms of there was a 10 for women to start wearing trousers. And then she's countering that in these testimonies, saying that, hey, guys, the scriptures are plain on this point. You know, even if we're going to take quote unquote culture as a thing, even at that time, it was very clear that, okay, it was men wearing the trousers and women wearing the skirts and the dresses. She says, spiritualists have to quite an extent adopted this singular mode of dress. Seventh-day Adventists who believe in the restoration of the gifts are often branded as spiritualists. Let them adopt this costume and their influence is dead. The people would place them on a level with spiritualists and refuse to listen to them. So now, it wasn't just the spiritualists that were pushing for this, but many feminists in her day started pushing for, trousers to be worn by the women, right? And that's where even into the up till like 1940 or 1950, for the most part, women are still wearing, say, skirts and dresses. The real change comes, I believe, you start to see it heavily in like the 60s, 70s, from there on, right? And now we're living in a society where obviously we would believe that, yeah, there's nothing in women's trousers, but I need to flip the conditions for people to see where we're at. So what has happened in terms of for the ladies and dress reform would be the equivalent is of if today men wore skirts, right? If men wore skirts and men wore like the dresses ladies wear, then that would be the equivalent of how it would look. Now, obviously for us, we would say, no, men can never wear skirts, right? Because we would say skirts are for women. So the problem becomes, if it's possible that it was wrong at her time for women to wear trousers, but now it's okay because the time has changed, that means it can be okay for men in future at some point potentially to wear skirts, because all that needs to change is time. So time can never be a reason for why something can be bad and then become good. For it to be good, it had to be good in that day as well.
Can I ask something?
Mhm.
Okay. Because I'm just asking really to know. Because I'm coming from a place where I don't generally wear trousers like that. But when I was ill, for example, I did use tracksuits and stuff because I couldn't fit into anything else. Plus, I was always cold. That's why I said there's nuances to things. So that's what I'm asking. Is it really to say that women can never, ever, ever wear trousers? Do you get?
I mean,
Mhm.
you have thermal leggings, by the way. So, like, you have women even in
Wait,
Russia, I know, where it's freezing. They'll still do that. They can still wear skirts and for them to not be cold.
wait,
But that
Lazar,
kind of goes back. That kind of goes back to what Mariska was asking before about materials, because I've been conscious of that for a long time. You can
Mhm.
get thermal leggings and stuff, but they're not always the best. In fact, most of the case, they're not the best material, and that's another irritant. And like I said, when I was ill, I wasn't thinking about all those things. I was just ill. Do you know what I mean? That's why I said there's nuances. So, is
I
it
mean, I
fair to
don't.
say that it's kind of extreme to say that women can never, ever, 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 ever wear trousers ever? Do you get what I'm
I
I
saying?
don't.
mean, it would be, wait, Lazar, hold up.
Mhm.
So, because it would be like you're saying there is no combination of leggings or skirts that would have been warm, is what you're getting at.
Yeah, but also wearing too much layers. When I was, okay, for example, when I was bedbound, I wasn't
Mhm.
wanting to add all these layers on. I just wanted something that I could wear. Do you know what I'm saying to you? I wasn't
Yeah. So,
thinking too deeply about, oh, yeah, I need to wear a skirt now. Absolutely not.
okay. So I'm trying to understand. Is it that the skirt was too cold and so you needed layers, or that the layers were too much? Because if the problem was that it was too cold and therefore needed layers, right? Um,
No, that wasn't the thing. Like I said, I was bedbound for a lot of the time. When I
mhm.
was bedbound, I wasn't thinking about wearing a skirt. Do you get what I'm saying to you? Then, because I lost a lot of weight, I was basically skeletal. That was another thing. Going to and from hospital, I wasn't thinking about wearing a skirt. It would have been way too uncomfortable to put on a bunch of layers, especially if you have to then take off for examinations and stuff. It just wasn't practical at the time. Now that I'm well, I don't do trousers like that anymore. But when I was ill, it was a different situation. That's why I said nuances. So that's why I asked, is it sinful then for a woman to ever wear trousers?
Okay, I'm trying to understand the problem, because I'm thinking because from what you're saying, it sounds like, had you worn skirts in that time, right, or a skirt at that time, there's a certain inconvenience the skirt brings that the, let's say, joggers doesn't bring, right? And
Yeah.
I'm trying to fully understand what that is, because if it's warmth, right, I guess that's one thing. I think warmth can be argued that I'm sure you
But
can
also practicality as well.
see.
There's a bunch of
Yeah,
different things.
yeah. So practicality is going to be defined in something like warmth as well, right? So either ease of removal, ease of putting on, or whether it's warm or whether it's cold. So
Now, I'll put it this way, right? If I was wearing a skirt with like leggings and all that stuff, all that's a lot of effort. I did not have energy at the time for all of that. Number one, and two, because I was in hospital or going to hospital, I had examinations. So the thought of having to exert that energy to take all those layers off just for what you get. So it's
effort.
easier
Okay.
just to put on tracksuits that were warm enough to wear and then easy enough to take off. So I could just, if you get what I'm saying.
Okay, so effort is mainly, it seems to be the thing that's coming through a lot.
But that's
In
what I'm
my
saying, because I was sick. It was very different to me on an average day. That's why I asked, is it
mm,
a sinful for a woman to ever wear trousers? Because you think about how many women are sick. They're not thinking about dress reform.
right. So in, at least let's give an example. For example, there's many times where Sister White was bedbound, right? And still in that time, she was wearing, say, skirts as well at the time. So I'm wondering, is it impossible, or is it just mainly like, because this is a thing we're used to, right? Therefore, it's the easiest thing we do.
But you can't also use her
Her,
situation to explain every single situation of woman being sick and bedbound. Do you get what I'm saying to you?
but even in her day, there were loads of women that were sick and bedbound, but still did the same thing.
Yeah, but like I mentioned, going to hospital and stuff.
Yeah, they still, even in the sanitariums, right? Like Kellogg Sanitarium, he would have had loads of women.
Sanitarium's not a hospital, but that's a whole different conversation. But that's what
But
I'm saying. Sometimes you have to come from a level of understanding. If you don't, because once again, it's very easy for a man to say, "Oh yeah, women should just wear trousers, skirts all the time," but men don't wear them, so they don't understand what it feels like to wear them. Again, with the different materials and stuff, that's another thing too that goes into things. So that's why I said there's nuances to things. Obviously, God knows He's merciful, but that's why I said, how can we really say that it's a sin for women to ever wear trousers if you don't know the reason why?
so are you saying, therefore, in sickness, right? You're thinking in sickness that's going to be one of
Not
the
just
new.
that, but in any situation. Okay, I'll put it this way.
Hmm.
If you see a woman wearing trousers, which is, everyone, loads of people,
Hmm.
I don't think it's right to just assume, oh yeah, it's sinful for her to do that if you don't know her situation, is what I'm saying to you. What if it's someone who literally can't afford other clothes? Do you get what I'm saying to you? There's so many different nuances to that. That's what I'm saying to you. Is it right
Yeah.
to then say that wearing trousers for women is sinful? Full stop.
Right. So let me. I'll say this now. Close in prayer, then I'll continue.
Mm.
All those cases have been dealt with in the past. That's why I mean it's hard to say, to use those nuances as a justification. Like, for example, if someone says, well, what about money? Back in the day, you had poor women, you had rich women. Or if someone says, what about the weather? Back in the day, you still had the same weather conditions, and if not worse, because they didn't have central heating, right? But yet, even in all those cases, the women still found a way to do the dress reform,
Yeah, but
right?
back then, what clothes were made for women. As in, like,
And
if you wanted a dress, you needed to get it made or make it yourself. It was different. You get what I'm saying? And then today's world, like Mariska pointed out earlier, it's harder to find clothes of certain fabrics. And then if you don't know how to sew, what are you going to do? Do you get what I'm saying to you? There's nuances to things, is what I'm trying to say.
I don't agree with that. I think even today the clothes are made for women as well when it comes to dresses.
I'm not saying that women should wear trousers. What I'm saying is I can't fully say it's sinful for them ever to wear them, is what I'm trying to say.
Right. Let me close in prayer, and then I'll have to see if there's anything else, but just at least for the live stream. So let's kneel, close in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for this time of Asking Adventist. Thank you for bringing us together and helping us to get through all these questions. Lord, we want to pray. Please help us throughout the remainder of this week so that we can come into the Sabbath whole and ready to learn as well for another day. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.